Detective Comics 981. James Tynion IV, Eddie Barrows back on the art for this final issue of the run. And we beat OMAC. Tim kind of breaks out of it because Steph gives him a pep talk. And is like, hey, you can do this, Tim. I've given you control back.
Yeah.
And he does. And then we have lots of fun epilogues. Setting up all the characters.
So usually I have an issue when you come in and you do an arc and then you kind of just reset the pieces and it's almost like you could remove your arc. I'm glad Tynion does kind of both, right? Where he leaves threads hanging for someone to pick up on, or even himself. But other ones like Batwoman, her entire arc in this is back to exactly where it started. Like, there's no colony. She's back working with her dad, just as Batwoman. So
no, it's true, because you do have the two different schools of thought from a lot of comics writers as to whether or not they put the toys back in the box and leave it how they found it for someone else to have a go, or if they okay, here's something, your turn now.
I think that the neat trick is to it though is that because she lost like her Bat membership, if you will, and she regains it and like sort of is more reinvigorated with it. Because not on top of that, she's also back with her dad. This is even like back to the start of this run in a lot of ways. Yeah. She's back to her dad working with her as Batwoman.
So usually I don't like that going into the box again, because I feel like these are serialized stories that build as you go, and like part of the challenge of taking a run over is how am I going to deal with that. That's just how I view it. Here though, I loved exactly where it left off every single character.
Yeah, I did as well. And to be fair, Batwoman's I think it's the only one where you can say that she's outright kind of back to square one.
Give or take where she was. Yeah.
Everyone
else has had growth.
Not emotionally, but just in terms of like the next person to go write Batwoman can start off as this is classic Batwoman with her father, and like we can do that. But like I love where Cass ends up. Cass So obviously she ends up at the Thompsons clinic, and like Harper Rose like, hey, come work with us, and Leslie's like, hey, like we'll get you enrolled in school and stuff, but someone's volunteered to help you, and I'm like, oh, who's this? Who's this? Yeah? And she opens the door. I'm like, holy shit, it's Babs. Babs and Cass working together. She's helping her. This is just a solo run. It was great.
I smiled at that. I was like, this is awesome. Like, yay, Babs.
And then she starts doing Shakespeare.
And she starts doing Shakespeare.
And then I was like, oh no, Clayface. And then we get to my holy shit moment. So where Clayface ain't gone.
Yeah, Clayface leaves a note for her. He's got a tear in his eye. He's off with Victoria. Victoria. I almost said Victober there. Victoria October. You know, her.
It's such a good lead-in, though, isn't it? The Shakespeare that was the thing that really highlighted their relationship.
Yeah, their unifying thing. And then he's just like, no, she's better off right now.
I've never been so happy to see someone recite Shakespeare in all my life.
Oh, man.
Warms my heart.
I came into this run going, I guess Clayface is a cool character. Never did I think that he'd become one of my favorite Bat characters. Like,
it just on Cass as well. Like back to like when they're fighting, like and Steph's like, oh, I need to keep hacking, OMAC and stuff. And Cass like, don't worry, no one's getting to you. And she starts holding off like waves of OMAC soldiers. And then she starts fighting alongside Batman. And he's like, hey, I was trying to keep this fight away from you. And she's like, no, I'm a bat. I belong in this fight. And then he smiles. And I'm like, damn, yes. Like,
and then smiling's weird.
If nothing else, as Tim points out later, if nothing else, Cass is getting a bat on her chest next time she's popping up somewhere, right?
Whatever name they come up with, I hope it's better than Orphan, because Orphan's fine. But she's not an orphan anymore. She has a family.
Yeah.
Like,
it worked for where she was in that story. The Batman Eternal, Batman and Robin Eternal, whichever one it was that she was in.
Yeah.
So it really worked for that, and and it's worked for most of this run, because this run has been about her getting a family, right? She's still been an orphan for most of it. So, but going forward, that can only last so. Yeah.
So whatever, like if they make her a Black Bat, whatever, like cool.
Yeah, Black Bat's fine. Whatever.
But yeah.
Honestly though, like if they just go with the idea of like, you know what, kind of like how there's two Flashes, we can have more than one Batgirl. It's fine.
Pete, you want 3 Batgirls?
I do want 3 Batgirls. You know I want 3 Batgirls, Matt. Don't joke about this. Interesting points to make from this. So here's one thing from that blog post and one thing from Twitter a while back. On Twitter a while back, I'm sure we brought this up on the show when he said this, but he was helping develop a book for 2 of the characters from his Detective Comics run that was going to happen later. And at the time he said he wouldn't say which 2. based on what he says in this, and based on what's in the issue as well, and based on what he said in this post, he says in the post that he's no longer going to be writing Tim Drake, and he's excited to read it as a fan again. But I mean, do we agree that Tim and Steph seem to be the two that would most likely to get their own book of some kind coming out of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's not Tynion doing it, because he's doing Odyssey, whoever's writing it, he set up.
Dark. He's doing Dark.
Dark. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Job Williamson's doing
Williamson's
Odyssey.
doing it.
Same difference, but I know what you meant. Yeah.
Writers. Yeah. But yeah, he left a clean place for them to jump on.
Yeah.
And whatever book that is, I will be on from day one.
And you know, it's Tim. Like he's like saying he's going off to college, and you know, Bruce is going to know he's not, like, because he's Batman, and he's like,
he says immediately, it's like Bruce knows I'm not.
Yeah.
And then I love that we cut to Bruce and Alfred talking.
Yeah. And Batman's like, it's fine, I trust him. He'll come and see me when
wherever he's at.
Yeah. Shut down the tracer. You know, we don't need to track him.
But here's the important part.
When he wants us, he'll let us know.
They're going off to investigate different timelines because they've seen a lot of timelines. That's what they're going to look into.
Yeah.
So, in my dream Batgirl scenario, it starts off with Babs and Cass, and then Steph comes back from this sometime in the middle of the run and joins the third one. That's my dream scenario.
I want Steph and Tim with Rip Hunter, throw in another character, and they're doing exile stuff, visiting these other realities, and that's how I get Connor Kent back.
It wouldn't shock me if we get that, Matt. Like now, admittedly, I see it as more of a mini series than I do an ongoing. But I
don't care.
Yeah, but I see it happening. This is clearly setting something up, and based on again what he wrote in his post, he said that there was one character who didn't get to finish the arc with, and he said it's a female character. I would guess Cass.
See, I think probably more likely Steph, because I think Cass had an arc, right? She grew to have a family. She grew to have Clayface. Steph
That's fair.
Kind of got off when Tim got taken off the board. Steph did as well for a lot of the book.
Which makes me question, though, if like someone's doing this Steph Tim book, but then because Tynion says he's going to get back to it, he says he has to work on. It was specifically doing the Legion of Doom stuff for Justice League. He says he has to get that out of the way before he can start thinking about writing another book on top of Dark. But he's going to get to it. It's going to happen.
And also, Steph realized that she doesn't have to work the Bat. Like, it's fine. Like, she knows her place with Batman. Like, they're never going to agree on how to do things, and that's okay.
I can still see the end of the arc being her choosing to do it anyway, though. She doesn't need to.
Well, yeah,
but she chooses to.
And so that's the arc. I feel like that's where it was going, where she was ruining his stuff. That's what led to Anarchy, and then he finished this run up and went, "Oh crap, that's not exactly where I wanted to put her with Bruce." But he kind of wrapped it up as quick as he could. But
yeah, so maybe we'll get a Steph mini or ongoing from Tynion in a year's time.
The other option is it could be Batwoman, given that we spoke about how she's kind of in the same place. Everyone else got their arc, got to move on, whereas she didn't. So maybe that's what he
also brought up the first arc in Batwoman, which we can agree is, besides the art, probably the strongest that book had been. So, and did he fully write that or co-write that?
He co-wrote that, yeah.
He co-wrote the first arc, yeah.
So I feel like a lot of what he wanted to do was in there with Batwoman, which he said was another character that was from when he was reading 52 as a fan.
And hey,
he really loved that story.
This will be no shock to anyone, but if it is Steph and we're getting a Steph Tim book and a Steph book, I'm okay with it. I'll take
me too.
2 Steph books.
That's Steph, and the fact that we learned that this OMAC, like, it was a future that could happen, but not. So now you're playing with hyper time.
Oh yeah, because we see, of course, that Kate killing Bruce wasn't what we thought it was. Like Bruce, was willing. He asked for it to happen.
It was very much a Harry Potter situation with Snape, right? Like we didn't quite understand at the time, but when all was revealed, it was like, oh well, this was the only option.
Yeah,
you know.
And I think it's interesting on that there, where in that future, the whole realization for Bruce is there doesn't always have to be a Batman.
Right.
Right, we can do something else, and I think that's given that the whole point. This arc is Batman Eternal. Yeah, the idea of there must always be a Batman to have that legacy.
Well, and he created Brother Eye for that, and then Brother Eye goes full on Skynet and wants to maintain itself. So maybe part of that was Brother Eye becoming Batman.
What I think is particularly interesting after, Bruce knows about this revelation, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end, Alfred's like, "Oh, come on, no, don't tell me next time you're starting an entire school for young vigilantes." And he's like, "No, not yet." And it's a hint as maybe one day.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a hint to this Outsider stuff coming up. Which, on that subject, by the way, someone asked Brian Hill on Twitter, is like, "Hey, when are you going to just admit this is leading to an Outsiders book after your detective arc?" And he just said, this was his response: "The Hill administration has no comment on this at this time."
So I think that the great response to that is just go in about 3 months when it solicits time.
Well, see, that's what I always liked about Batman Inc. was that Bruce wasn't necessarily in the suit all the time, right? He got to play quarterback from the sideline and be like, "Hey, go here and go here," and I could be the face of this as Bruce Wayne. I kind of like that idea of that in the future. That's where this goes. Like he has his team of people, but he doesn't need to be there.
And on the possibility spent out of this, I want to say I'm really happy. It feels, at least with Cass, Steph, and Tim, it feels like no, they're not being written out so that we're not going to see them anymore. It feels like they're all setting up stuff for them for the future. I mean, and I don't mind that if Cass isn't one of the ones getting her own book, because we already know that she's going to be involved in this Outsider stuff. She's going to be somewhere. She's going to be important somewhere else. And the only thing I would add is that I do hope that Steph is not always tied to Tim. Because I like them as a pair, don't get me wrong, but I would hope that eventually Steph gets a little bit of solo limelight.
That was great about the Brian Q. Miller run. It's like, Tim would pop in, but it wasn't always defined by her relationship. And he had talked about that too, if I remember right. Like, he wanted to go beyond Steph as Tim's girlfriend. Like, she has somewhere to stand out besides that.
Because I mean, I've loved her in this detective run, but she's always been tied to Tim's story. Like, she left when Tim disappeared.
Alternatively, I'd like a Tim solo, but without Steph. So,
Yeah.
Well, that's fine as long as I get my Steph solo book as well. I will grant you that.
If he's not pining over Steph, he needs to be pining over Connor. That's one or the other.
I'm just saying, if I have to pick between the two books, I'm taking a Tim book.
No, I'm taking a Steph book. I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
But Tynion Drum was fantastic. We're sad to see it go.
Yep. Oh, this was a 9.5. Just
oofed. Yeah, right up there.
Level.
I want to go as high as a 9.5. It's definitely a 9. I'm definitely in 9 territory. Yeah, screw it, 9.5. I'm with Matt. 9.5. Connor.
I went with an 8.5 because the back half of the book is fantastic. The first half is okay. It's just a fight sequence. There's a few good moments here or there, but it's fine.
I left us eternally happy.